Commission all the EU priorities organized by ISPI in cooperation with the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. I'm very glad to introduce our distinguished speakers, the Minister of Foreign and European Affairs of Croatia, Gordan Grlić Radman, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade of North Macedonia, Timcho Mucunski, and Katarzyna Sidlo, Director of the Middle East and North Africa Department at the Center for Social and Economic Research in Poland. So, new Commission, hopefully, in a few days, there will be a new Commission that is expected to take office in early December. Indeed, on Wednesday, the EU Parliament will vote the new Commission led by Ursula von der Leyen. We have seen that this year, this time, the process has been more difficult than in the past. In any case, sooner or later, the new Commission will be confronted with old and new challenges, both internal and external challenges. At its border, the war in Ukraine remains the main challenge to the stability and the security of the entire European continent. But many challenges also come from the European Mediterranean neighborhood, challenges stemming from ongoing conflicts and crises, from climate change, irregular migration, just to mention a few. But how to turn all these challenges into opportunities for cooperation, I think is the greatest challenge that the new EU Commission will face. Look at the Mediterranean neighborhood, two main questions raise. First, what issues should the new EU Commission prioritize in its relationship with the Mediterranean countries? Second, what approach and what tools should the Commission utilize to promote cooperation? Some of you remember that almost 30 years ago, the Euro-Mediterranean Partnership, the so-called Barcelona process, was launched. And the aim was to create an area of peace, stability, and shared prosperity. It was an ambitious aim. The area is far from being a space of shared prosperity, stability, but the aim remains the same. So my first question to Minister Grlić Radman. Croatia, EU member since 2013, is also a Mediterranean country, and it has a privileged location, position in the region. So from the Croatian perspective, what are the main challenges that the EU is facing in the Mediterranean region today? Please, Minister.
Thank you so much, and I am really delighted to be here once again in Rome, the city, and which played so important role in Mediterranean, but also in the history, culture, and so thank you so much for invitation. Yes, and Croatia, given its specific geopolitical position, we are not only we are at the crossroads. We are not only in the Mediterranean country. We are Middle European. We are close to also Western Balkans region with the countries we share common history, more than 70 years. And but in 30 years after Croatia was recognized, so we achieved all necessary the most important foreign policy goals. Only what remains, it's an OECD membership, and we are on the way too. And just to start with our neighborhood, what is our neighborhood is very important for the stability, for the peace, for security, and so on. Croatia is very much interested in and invested a lot of diplomatic, political engagement just to promote European perspective of the Western Balkans, but of course it's also up to the countries to fulfill all their so required their criteria. But when it comes to our neighborhood, our south neighborhood, however, the Mediterranean, the countries around, so they are our partners. And we have to, not only Croatia, but the whole European Union should be on a more focus and to work together in order to find a good platform of communication and cooperation, having in mind that the rapidly, so that the changing, given it's a rapidly changing geopolitical environment, and so are many challenges, and we live in a specific and dangerous world. Unfortunately, we had the crisis, Russian aggression against Ukraine. We had the crisis in the Middle East, and they are not alternative for peace. That means to achieve peace and stability, we have to work together. And that is, it's not by accident that our Mediterranean, our south neighborhood is part of the strategic compass. It's a European Union, very important document for the next decade. There is security. You mentioned just irregular migration. You mentioned climate change. But of course, also the disruptive channels of actually food security. So it's something that so we have to face and to find the solutions just to transport to the countries the need the best. And there are so many challenges right now in the Middle East, and our aim is de-escalation, ceasefire. Also in the today in their opening remarks, some ministers, some speakers also mentioned situation there in Middle East, and also in Lebanon, for example, where Lebanon can count also on us, on our support, and the European Union should be more present there. First of all, we appealed to that all the hostages should be released and to find a common solution in the Middle East. It's important that it's not also by accident Croatia, given its Mediterranean geopolitical position, also offered, and we gave our Madam Dubravka Šuica, who will be new commissioner. Even it's a new reintroduced portfolio just devoted to the Mediterranean. And we support her very much, and we support this portfolio. There is a lot of work ahead of her. So with our common engagement, we can find probably also better solution in the Middle East. She will be quite very well engaged. And now with your question, new commission, old obligation, but new commission and new obligations. Now, so we are facing a new situation in our strategic environment, and we want to that peace, that rules-based order must be respected, and just to pull together all the democratic countries, all the partners who share our values, and to isolate aggressors and who isolate someone who is who is not respecting the international law. But so we have to live together, and in order to live together, we have to respect the rules. And so the Croatia, so as a country, we had actually also homeland war, and in our experience we know very much that we do not take peace and stability for granted. Yeah. And we fought for our freedom, for our independence, our sovereignty, and we appreciate very much, of course, what we achieved in this regard and 30 years ago.
Thank you so much, Minister. So now my question is to you, Minister Muchunski, from the perspective of North Macedonia, which is a candidate country. What are the main challenges the EU is facing in the Mediterranean, and what role can North Macedonia and Southern Balkans countries together play in addressing the shared challenges coming from the region? Please.
So first of all, thank you. A huge thank you to our colleague, Mr. Tajani. I don't think anybody minds being invited to the beautiful Rome for 2 days. And especially a huge applause to the Foreign Ministry, as well as ISPI, the Adenauer Foundation, with which I personally have a very long-standing relationship with, for organizing today's panel and the possibility to discuss such substantial issues. First of all, I echo many of the things that my colleague, Mr. Grlić Radman, reiterated. Looking at it from our perspective, we are, yes, a candidate country. Next year, we will celebrate 20 years of being a candidate country, which is an issue in its own, and which is an issue that will play very deeply into how the European Commission will look at an enlargement in our region, but on the specific issue at hand. First of all, what I will say is, although we are a candidate country, we are a candidate country that is 100% aligned with the EU CFSP. What we're hoping for with the new High Representative, Ms. Kallas, is that we will be brought on in the decision-making process, the aligning countries, the countries that are 100% aligned with the CFSP and that are candidate countries, to have input in many of the decisions when it comes to the CFSP. Because these are issues that affect the European Union, but that affect us geographically, politically, and primarily from a security perspective. The challenges are exactly the same. I share the approach that there is malign influence in the Mediterranean that we have to counter-react to. Especially the role of Russia and China is something that we cannot absolutely ignore. I think migration is a very important issue. We, as a country, are part of that migration route. In 2015, we proved how we can effectively be, at times, the border of the European Union, the protector of European security, the protector of European interests, although we are not a member state. To this day, our cooperation with Frontex is at an extremely high level and has proven itself extremely efficient. The challenges are economic and trade challenges as well. Sometimes when there is, as my colleague Grlić Radman said, disruption, that disruption affects our economy, that disruption affects trade, that causes inflation in our economies, that causes domestic disturbances. So we have to counter-react. We have to have common approaches. We have to be unified in our reaction to these challenges, but we also have to work when it comes to outreach, when it comes to promoting diplomacy, when it comes to values. Although we, as I continue to reiterate, are not a member state of the European Union, we have proven as a nation that we are a functional, multi-ethnic and multi-confessional democracy, which means that we can also commonly be promoters of shared values, values that we can promote with this region. And we have to be engaged. I think we cannot ignore the role of engagement. Part of that engagement is multilateral fora, such as the one being held here today, where we engage with partners from this region, where we discuss about our common challenges and common solutions, but also being present in the region, actively, bilaterally, multilaterally present, so that we work together to overcome the problems that may not directly affect us at this day, but have, as we conclude together, long-term repercussions. I applaud the role of Ms. Šuica, who is an effective leader, but has proven herself as an effective leader both domestically in Croatia, but also on the European level. We have known her from her time in the European Parliament. Recently, she had a very important role in the last European Commission when it comes to demography, and I think she will be an extremely efficient and proven leader with this new European Commission on this issue that is extremely important for us. Engagement on the key issues, I think, is primary. Issues such as energy, trade, migration, and finding common solutions to them, with the full understanding that sometimes the stance of all of the EU member states might not align on some of the details, but on the general issues that are at hand, I think that without a problem we can be unified in the message that we send to this region.
Thank you so much. Katarzyna, Minister Muchunski mentioned the disruptive effects of instability on the economy, on trade. And how do you assess the current state of economic cooperation between the EU and the Mediterranean neighbors? And do you think that the war in Ukraine is diverting the EU attention and the EU funds away from the Mediterranean?
Right, first of all, let me extend also thanks for inviting me here to the ESP and the Ministry of the Foreign Affairs in Italy. It's a great pleasure to be here and to be able to contribute to the discussion. Well, of course, the Russian invasion of Ukraine disturbed pretty much everything. Coming from Poland, we can only say, we told you so, it's going to happen. And it's absolutely normal that at first all the attention went to the east. Now, a little bit looking in the midterm, in some ways this attention has really been diverted because, of course, you had to extinguish the fire first. The attention has been also diverted in some ways because the invasion of Ukraine has really had one positive spillover, which is giving a new momentum to the enlargement process. So indeed, this is a very welcome that this is happening, but the enlargement process definitely takes some attention from the southern neighborhood, which is why I think it was a very good move on the current Commission to separate the portfolio for the DG Mediterranean, to focus on the Mediterranean, to include the Gulf states in that portfolio, and to have separate commissioner focusing on enlargement. Those are two different processes, and I think this is a very good move on the part of the new Commission. Of course, the invasion of Ukraine in one way directed the attention towards the Mediterranean, and this is because of the energy issues. So this new refocus again on the energy security and the need to collaborate with partners in the southern neighborhood and beyond in the GCC in terms of the energy security and going forward, moving with the decarbonization process. Now, the current state of the economic cooperation is not ideal. I would say for the past years, migration, apart from energy, really took over. The recent agreements that we had, the Memorandum of Understanding with Tunisia of 2023, the Strategic and Comprehensive Partnership with Egypt of 2024, they were branded as more geared towards economy, trade, investment. But in fact, what the Commission doesn't like to call them, but everyone else calls them, are migration deals. So this is a little bit of a problem. Now, going forward, I really hope that what on paper looks good. So first of all, the Commission wanting to be investment commission. This is key. And second of all, rebranding. I mean, words matter. Previously, we had the new agenda for the Mediterranean. An agenda is something that you set unilaterally yourself. Now the Commission wants to have the Pact for the Mediterranean. And I think Pact is something that you need two sides to form. So I hope that this wording will also be reflected in actually the cooperation going forward. So working on those bilateral tailor-made agreements for each country that Ms. Sharika actually talked about during her hearings at the European Parliament, there is a big potential for strengthening the economic cooperation between the EU and individual partner countries in the region. And I think the focus should be on investment more than on trade right now. There's more potential for forming trade deals than pushing forward deep and comprehensive trade agreements that we haven't seen much progress in the past. But of course, this is not going to be easy. And of course, there are many other issues that the Commission has to take into consideration while forming the economic partnership. The most important, I would say, challenge when trying to have more investment into the region is that, unlike some other countries present in the region like China, EU companies cannot be told to go to an individual country invest. There need to be a conducive environment for trade and for investment. So this is a little bit of a problem. Signing an agreement, bilateral agreement, even the best written agreement is not going in itself to attract investment. And in here, I think the EU has to work with some other partners, with the Gulf countries, for instance, to try to kind of leverage the common potential in terms of incentivizing the partners in the southern neighborhood to improve the investment climate and look into developing the economic relationship towards that direction.
Thank you very much. Let me turn again to you, Minister Girlich Radman. You mentioned before the important role that the EU Commissioner for the Mediterranean, Dubravka Šuica, will have, and it's important, an important role also for Croatia. From your perspective, what should be the priorities of the incoming Commission in the wider Mediterranean?
Your question is so important, and it makes actually the even more interesting and more challenging, of course, for the all composition, all collegium of the European Commission. So I do remember when Croatia assumed the EU presidency in the first half of 2020, and our slogan was in European Union in a challenging time. But
always challenging.
Yeah, but however, we didn't expect that. So it will be for us. So when it comes to the pandemic, the COVID-19 challenging time, and fortunately, we haven't had these meetings in Croatia. The last one was on the 6th of March. We had an Gimnich and the extraordinary FAC, however. And then so we were forced to adapt us to the new circumstances and to work on, to communicate on online and so on, however, but we used to do it. And however, also in this very difficult time, so we achieved our homework and everything what we actually promised and in our program. Only what was not able just to organize the conference on the future of Europe in Dubrovnik on night because it was not possible just not to physically to organize a meeting. But however, everything, even Western Balkans summit we organized, and we then issued the declaration on the Western Balkans for Albania, Macedonia, just to open negotiations with the European Union, and of course Bosnia and Herzegovina. Now we see some achievements, and even now we want to see progress in the European perspective in the Western Balkans. But can we keep in mind that Dubravka Šuica she kept actually the part of her previous portfolio, namely demography, also mentioned demography. But so with Mediterranean portfolio is something that it's not only up to her, it's also up to us to support her portfolio because it is a European one. We are looking forward to her proposal, for example, the EU's post-Gaza strategy for the Middle East, for example, and of course the ways to achieve peace and stability in this region, but also a contribution to the multi-annual support program for the Palestinian Authority is also something that Croatia supports. And we also committed to the joint efforts within the EU Med9. So Med9, they are European Union Mediterranean countries, and Croatia and Slovenia just entered a few years ago. It's really organized for the benefit of the Mediterranean basin, and which need, of course, to remain high on the agenda, EU agenda. But just to mention that there is 45% of the EU population. So its composition, 9 countries, that means 45% of the EU population. It really demonstrates that a leverage, and that Mediterranean through EU Med became energy hub. Yeah. Energy hub, it's very important, and Croatia can contribute in this regard. Croatia became our energy hub for the region and beyond. Just to mention that as of 1st January 2021, we opened the LNG terminal on the island of the Kirk. And at that time, so our humble capacity was 9.2 BCM. But after the Russian aggression against Ukraine, phasing out our dependency on Russian oil and gas remained crucial, and that Croatian government decided on just to double down its capacity up to 6.1. Not only gas, but also there is an JANAF, Adriatic oil pipeline. Also, just it's good to see my colleague from Slovak Republic. We just discussed it, and when I visited bilaterally, when we met in Bratislava, we can just deliver and to ensure the needs of Hungary, for example, of Slovak Republic, and of course the countries of the Western Balkans. But also, I like also to mention, when it comes to the Mediterranean, when it comes to MENA, it's Middle East, North Africa, the important role of GCC. We recently have the summit of GCC. I think we do see that the countries of GCC can contribute and can be, there are importance for finding a common solution when it comes to finding the peace and stability in the Middle East. And of course, also you mentioned once again Dubravka Šuica. I think it will be challenging, however, but it's something new, and the European Union could give its impetus in this regard and could be more present there, but not to forget, of course, our partners. First of all, United States as well. It's very important to enhance our partnership with the new American administration, and to work together to establish peace and to see a stable and of course to find a solution in the Middle East. Of course, Croatia. So for the very beginning, our approach was a two-state solution in the Middle East. Two peoples, two states.
Thank you. You mentioned very important issues, and you highlighted the role of Croatia as an energy hub. So moving to North Macedonia, it has a strategic location for trade and connectivity. So in these sectors, how North Macedonia can contribute to strengthening cooperation between the EU and the southern neighborhood? Minister Muchulski, please.
This is probably one of the key issues that we look at as a government. We are a small, landlocked country, as we reiterate, a candidate for the EU, but also a NATO member state. And in that sense, we see ourselves as the crossroads of our region. And that is why, what are the firm priorities of our current government? The first two key priorities, Corridors 8 and Corridor 10. Corridor 8 affects Italy. It is a corridor that is of importance for trade, for economy, but also for political security purposes. And our aim is to continue in transport investments, but also railway investments on Corridor 8, which goes all the way from Italy, going even to Romania. The second priority of equal importance, not second because it is of lesser importance, is Corridor 10. And our aim in Corridor 10 is key investments when it comes to railway infrastructure, essentially connecting Vienna, Budapest, Belgrade, Skopje, Thessaloniki, and Athens. We are currently also working, and what is in the pipeline for us is the interconnector, which would connect us with Greece and the port of Alexandroupolis, with the hope that we can later invest in an interconnector going to Serbia, which would help bring the energy from Alexandroupolis all the way to Central and Eastern Europe. The primary goal being less energy dependence on Russia. And in that sense, we see this as policies of stability. Economic stability, political stability, but also equally important, security stability for NATO member states, for like-minded countries in the region and throughout Europe. We are pushing these investments as a government, hoping that towards the end of the current government mandate, all of them will be in the pipeline, being close to finished, some aspects of these projects being finished. And in that sense, we will continue to serve as a crossroads of infrastructure and as a crossroads of energy in the region and in Europe. And this is one of the essential aspects of keeping Europe safe, but also proving that the Western Balkans is a vital part of Europe's stability. In that sense, what we hope for is a commitment, a further commitment to the Western Balkans, a commitment coming from Brussels, but a commitment coming in equal status, in equal principle from all of the member states. Because on all of these issues, as Minister, and I will again echo, as I said previously, Minister Grlić-Radman, it is not just about the commitment of the Commission, it is also about the equal commitment and push coming from all of the member states on all of these issues, so that we take what we speak and perform it and turn it into action and into deliverable policies.
Yes, thanks for highlighting. This is a very important aspect, the key role of economic cooperation as a driving force to foster political stability. Turning to you, Katarzyna, in your view, what steps should the new Commission take to support economic development in southern neighborhood countries? And how can these countries help from their side the EU achieve its goal, especially in energy security, resilience of its value chains?
Right. So I will start with the first part. So what can the EU do to help the countries in its southern neighborhood? So the EU has been doing, it's a major payer, but I think it was the Commissioner-designate Shrika who actually mentioned that the EU wants to be not just a payer, but also a player. Now, the problem is that a lot of things that has been designed as helping with the economic reform has not actually worked. I will come back to the Memorandum of Understanding with Tunisia, which, the Commission was trying to portray as some sort of success, but in fact, and I'm trying to just not to mess up the quote, but the actual evaluation was that it's not only, but the biggest positive was 80% less migration from Tunisia in 2024 compared to 2022-23, and I quote, little bit advance in the Tunisian economy. So, when you think about it this way, the agreement that was supposed to be about economic development, but in fact, the advantage was decrease in migration, how can you not dub it a migration deal? The problem is, of course, not just on the EU side, because you need partners in the Southern neighborhood who are willing to implement the reforms in order to improve the economic situation. And this is not easy. I understand that the Commission is now working with Jordan and Morocco to try to sign similar agreements, comprehensive and strategic agreements. And perhaps with those partner countries, it will be a little bit easier to find common fields of cooperation. With Morocco, for instance, the energy portfolio will definitely play a big role. With some other partner countries like Egypt, equally, the economic reforms have not come by. So here the EU is working kind of hand to hand with the IMF. But the problem from the Egyptian side is that because the economy is, well, it's too big to fail. So some reforms will be implemented, and then there will be a backstop, and you can't really push more. And this more push is needed really in order to attract the investment that is needed, but investment not in big projects, vanity projects, but investment in actual sustainable infrastructure, including infrastructure for the energy. So this is not really an easy job. I said before in my first answer that there's perhaps some scope for cooperation with the partners in the Gulf to come together and try to push for certain reforms that are less politically sensitive, but definitely will have the benefit of attracting more investment. So that's for sure there. On the part of the trade, this is a little bit more complicated because as we know, the free trade agreements, they're outdated, they don't really work very well. No one is really willing to push forward with the deep and comprehensive trade agreements. So perhaps, again, the conversation should shift both to investment and to talking about trade, not in goods, but in services. On the second part of the question, how can the countries in the southern neighborhood, and I will extend it to the GCC now that the DG MET is covering the broader region. Of course, there's huge potential for renewables in the region, and that's undoubtedly true. But at the same time, a lot of countries who have the potential for renewables are benefiting hugely from the traditional energy extraction. So there's a very fair line in between benefiting from the resources that you have and moving forward with developing, for instance, solar energy. I would say that one thing to bear in mind for the future, for instance, when developing hydrogen, is that the Europe should bear in mind and be sensitive to the fact that the clean energy produced should also be used in those countries, not just transferred to the EU, so that the countries in the region continue to use polluting energy and the clean energy is transported directly to the EU. It really has to be a win-win balanced kind of deal. I understand there's a kind of new overarching program, the Trans-Mediterranean Energy and Clean Tech Cooperation Initiative. I just hope it will become an umbrella for all the other initiatives and not another one, because sometimes, frankly, it's a little bit difficult to understand which project is focusing on what. Yes, I will stop there right now.
Thank you, Katarzyna. I see that we have time for a third round of questions. So I turn to you, Minister Grlić-Radman, with a more specific question about Croatia. And what role can Croatia play in the security of Western Balkans and Europe? Because we talk about stability, security, and we would like to know a bit more on the role of Croatia.
So if you see that after the solution of former Yugoslavia, only Croatia and Slovenia achieved its membership in European Union. Some other countries from the Western Balkans are also the members of NATO, for example, like Macedonia. In fact, so Croatia could be a role model for the West Balkans, and we are really there. It's it's natural that so it's in our interest to have a stable, peaceful, institutional and functional Western Balkans. So the European border, it's the longest Schengen border in Croatia with Bosnia and Herzegovina, more than 1,000 kilometers. And Croatia is, as of 1st January 2022 and 2023 in the Schengen zone, and we also introduced euro as a Croatian national currency. So we are full integrated in the European Union. We are a loyal member of NATO. We are completely on the side of the rules of law, democracy, and as I mentioned, it's not Croatia, it's the other countries who claim or who perceive that Croatia is a success story. And we are very privileged to the fact that so we are considered as a success story. I think a lot of work. We did a lot of work, hard work. We work hard to achieve it. However, there are still to be works to be done. But so I also mentioned that so the hard work does pay off, and we offer our neighbors, our Western Balkans countries, our expertise, our experience. It's in common interest to have a good neighborly relations. But now it's up to the countries and the Western Balkans to promote. It's up to them that it should be visible that so they should promote regional stability and good neighborly relations. And Croatia is ready, of course, to close all the outstanding issues. So they are as a legacy of the solution from Yugoslavia. When it comes to the missing persons, we still, for example, searching on the 1,877. It's not only bilateral, it's universal, it's human, civilizational issue. And the full alignment with the European foreign and security policy, it's just 100%, it's must, so that there is the countries of the Western Balkans are, if you see just at the map, they are surrounded by the members of the European Union, by the members of NATO, and naturally and geostrategically, geopolitically, they belong to European Union. Of course, in that way, and with this in mind, so that Croatia is vocal proponent. Who is more interested than Croatia is? We are vocal proponent of the European perspective of the Western Balkans. But as I mentioned just, Croatia is ready to help it. And Croatia is there, and we helped Bosnia and Herzegovina, we helped Montenegro, we helped also Serbia, and of course North Macedonia. And we also want to see, and Albania, of course, we also want to see the Kosovo as a member of the international institution, and of course to be recognized also by United Nations as well. So there is there's no alternative for peace, for stability, just for sake of peace, of stability. We need the dialogue is, of course, the most important tool of how we can prevail some different approaches and to find a compromise. Compromise is important. And when it comes, for example, Ukraine, just we need peace, but not just a peace as a general peace. We need a just peace. And it's very important that, so we all the international community, democratic countries, our partners who share our common value should just pull together and, of course, to find a common solution for the Ukraine. And so everyone sufferings there. First of all, civilians one.
Thank you. In the framework of the EU enlargement, we know that North Macedonia is a candidate country, and what are your priorities in advancing your country integration into the EU?
So when it comes to this issue, and especially the context of what this discussion is about, the role of the new Commission, I would mention a term used in a bit of a different context this morning by our wonderful colleague from the United Arab Emirates. Our colleague Reem mentioned a trust deficit. And to be very honest, there is an existing trust deficit in our region about sometimes the objective intentions of the EU for enlargement. We know there are countries such as Croatia which will push this issue. But is the unanimity honest? And this is something that it's a battle we need to fight together, coming from a government that is pro-EU, that within the first 5 months of his mandate has retained a policy of being 100% aligned with the CFSP, that has a policy of fully supporting Ukraine, that within a month and a half of its formation managed to adopt what Commission President von der Leyen labeled an excellent reform agenda, which opened us up to the EU's growth plan. Yes, we see a new momentum after the war in Ukraine, but at the end of the day, it has been many years since the EU has delivered on enlargement. And it is not enough to just have rhetoric. It is not enough to just have fine words. But we need to see delivery on the basis of values, on the basis of issues such as alignment with the CFSP, on the basis of issues such as whether or not we have reformed our system of rule of law, the fight against corruption, issues such as alignment with fisheries policy, agriculture policy. But at the end of the day, we also need very openly to speak about the far too prevalent existence of bilateralization of the EU enlargement process, something we as a nation have been the utmost witness to. I remind my interlocutors all the time, in 30 years since our independence, we are a nation that has changed its flag, its currency, its constitution several times, a nation that has changed its name, and a nation that is not being allowed to open accession negotiations, yet again because of another bilateral request. And in this sense, what we're hoping for from the new Commission as well as the member states is the push of a merit-based approach. Alignment with the CFSP, as I said. Alignment with the acquis communautaire. How much of the reforms are being done? We will, as a government, push on these issues because we see these issues as the fundamental part of our path towards EU membership. We will be a government that will deliver, that will practice what it preaches, and in this sense hope that both from Brussels, but as we say yet again, from the member states, there will be recognition of what is being done tangibly on the ground to protect these over-prevailing values that we have that are mutual and that will move not just our region, but our whole continent forward towards the future.
Thank you. So let's see what will happen in the next 5 years with the new Commission. So Katarzyna, last question is for you. We talked extensively about the EU policies towards the Mediterranean, but let's try to change the perspective. And let's think from the perspective of southern neighborhood countries. how the EU policies are perceived in the region, and in particular, what are the key areas where the EU support is seen as most beneficial? Over to you, please.
Thank you. I mean, I think I have to start with what Minister was saying about trust. I think there's a lot of trust issues in the southern neighborhood as well when it comes to the EU policies. Even before the ongoing onslaught in Gaza, after the outbreak of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, there was this perception of double standards of the EU. And it continues and actually got worse, saying how the EU is basically not taking any concrete actions towards, there's a lot of words coming around, but there's not very concrete actions. The talks about suspending the association agreement with Israel went nowhere. This is not going to happen. The argumentation behind this is frankly, in my opinion, not sustainable. And I'm talking about populations now. I'm not talking about the governments, but the population sees and they see the double standards. After the invasion of Ukraine, again, I will give you an example of what happened. So immediately after the invasion, Poland saw millions of Ukrainians coming. And what we did, there was not a single refugee camp. Like people, including me, we were like hosting people on the floor of our apartments. Everyone, was driving back and forth. Would we do that the same for the Syrians? Did we do the same for the Syrians? We didn't, and we wouldn't. And the populations in the southern neighborhood saw that. There is this big issue of double standards. And there's a big issue of trust. Again, coming back to the Memorandum of Understanding, is it a deal to support the economy of the country or is it a migration deal? And the populations see that. So I think the big challenge for the upcoming Commission will be to rebuild this trust and to interact more honestly. I think working closer with the European Parliament in that regard would really help. In terms of the positives, just to finish on a positive note, you ask about which EU policies are seen, are viewed positively. There is, I think, slight improvement in the perception of the EU's kind of financial engagement. There was a question before, and it's still there, about how visible the EU projects are, how visible EU help is compared, for instance, to the US engagement or Chinese engagement for that matter. So there's slight improvement on that. But I think most importantly, what is viewed positively is it's still, the European way of life as a package. People still are willing to migrate to Europe because they see it as a good way of life. It's just that we can't contain this good way of life within our borders, and we can't pretend we're trying to promote it while, in fact, in the back pushing our own agenda. Again, agenda. I think that the new pact should be really a pact, should be really a conversation between the two. But it will take a lot of time and it will take a lot of efforts to rebuild the trust in the European Union and its policies within the populations in the southern neighborhood.
Thank you so much, Katarzyna. I agree there's an issue of trust, of double standards. There's also an issue of knowledge, because in many countries, people don't know what the EU does and what the EU policies are for the region. So we get to the end of our panel. We are 1 minute in advance. And I'd like to thank our speakers for their insightful interventions and enjoy the continuation of the conference. Thank you so much for your attention.